My parents disowned me for refusing to share my lottery winnings with my golden brother and told the whole family I was dead to them. 5 years later, they showed up at my gate begging for medical money. I told them ghosts don't have bank accounts and drove away. Hey Reddit! So my parents literally declared me dead to the entire family because I wouldn't hand over my lottery winnings to my golden child brother. 5 years later, they showed up at my gate crying about medical bills. I reminded them that ghosts don't have bank accounts and drove away while they stood there with their jaws on the ground. Let me take you back to where this all started, because the context here is absolutely necessary for you to understand just how satisfying this ending really is. I, 32 male, grew up as the invisible kid in my family. My younger brother Kevin, 30 male, was the golden child from the moment he took his first breath. I'm not being dramatic here. My mom literally has a shrine of Kevin's baby pictures in the living room. You know how many pictures of me are up there? Two. One from my birth and one from my high school graduation, where I'm partially cut off because they were trying to frame Kevin, who was standing next to me. Two pictures representing my entire childhood. That tells you everything you need to know about my place in this family. The favoritism in my house wasn't even subtle. It was like my parents read a manual on how to create sibling resentment and followed it to the letter. Kevin got everything handed to him on a silver platter, while I had to scratch and claw for every single thing I ever achieved. And I'm not talking about small stuff either. I'm talking about fundamental differences in how we were raised. Different rules, different expectations, different levels of love and attention. When I was 16, I wanted to play football. I had been practicing with friends all summer, and I was actually pretty decent. I came to my parents with a plan. I had researched the costs, the practice schedule, everything. I thought if I showed them I was serious, they would support me. My dad didn't even look up from the television. He said no because equipment was too expensive, and they couldn't afford the time commitment for practices. End of discussion. No negotiation, no trying to find a middle ground. Just no. When Kevin wanted to play lacrosse 2 years later, you would have thought he was trying out for the Olympics. My parents bought him top-of-the-line gear from some specialty shop 3 towns over. They drove him to every practice no matter how far away it was. They attended every single game, wearing custom jerseys with his name on them. They took photos. They posted on social media. They told everyone who would listen about their athletic superstar in the making. When I pointed out the double standard, my mom looked me dead in the eyes and said, Kevin had more natural athletic talent, and it would be a waste not to nurture it. Like I wasn't worth nurturing. Like my potential didn't matter, because Kevin's was somehow more valuable. I ran track by myself, junior and senior year. I paid for my own running shoes with money from my part-time job at the grocery store. I got myself to meets by bumming rides from teammates. They never came to a single one. Not one. I placed third at regionals my senior year, and they didn't even know about it until my guidance counselor mentioned it at a parent conference. The double standards didn't stop at extracurriculars. Kevin's grades were never questioned. When he came home with a C, my mom said he was just finding his groove. When I came home with a B, I got a lecture about not applying myself. Kevin was allowed to go to parties because he needed to socialize and develop his people skills. I wasn't allowed out past 9 on weekends because I needed to focus on my future. Kevin got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. I got the keys to my grandmother's 15-year-old sedan and was told to be grateful I had wheels at all. For college, I got told to figure it out myself. My parents sat me down the summer before my senior year and explained that they couldn't afford to help with tuition. They had already stretched themselves thin with Kevin's expenses, and there just wasn't money left for my education. Community college was my only option because they weren't contributing a dime, not one single dollar. So I figured it out. I worked full-time at a warehouse loading trucks from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. I took classes part-time during the day. I slept when I could, which wasn't often. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for months at a time. I watched my friends go off to universities and have the college experience while I was grinding away in a fluorescent-lit warehouse surrounded by boxes. It took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree in accounting. 6 years of exhaustion and sacrifice and doing everything the hard way. When I finally walked across that stage, my parents showed up 20 minutes late. They missed the actual moment when my name was called. They found seats in the back and sat there looking bored while I accepted my diploma. They left before the reception because Kevin had a thing. They didn't even stick around for pictures. My coworker from the warehouse took the only photo I have from that day. Kevin went to a state university on my parents' dime. They paid his tuition, his housing, his meal plan, his spending money, his spring break trips. When he changed his major 3 times because he couldn't decide what he wanted to do with his life, They praised him for finding his true passion. When he failed classes and had to retake them, they blamed the professors for not understanding his learning style. When he took an extra 2 years to graduate with a communications degree and a 2.3 GPA, they threw him a graduation party with catering and decorations, and relatives flying in from out of state. I got a text message that said congrats with a period at the end, not even an exclamation point. After graduation, Kevin moved back home because he couldn't find a job that matched his expectations. He wanted something creative and fulfilling that also paid well and didn't require too much effort. Shockingly, the job market wasn't exactly overflowing with those opportunities. So my parents converted the basement into a full apartment for him. New carpet, new bathroom, big screen television, mini kitchen, everything he needed to be comfortable while he figured out his next move. I moved into a studio apartment the day after I got my first real job as an accounts receivable clerk at a manufacturing company. The apartment was 400 square feet of stained carpet and flickering lights. The shower barely produced hot water. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors' phone conversations. I made barely enough to cover rent and food with nothing left over for anything else. When I asked if I could stay at home for just 3 months to save up for a deposit on a better place, my dad told me that real men don't move backwards. He said I needed to stand on my own 2 feet and stop expecting handouts. This from the same man who had just built his other son a luxury apartment in the basement. The irony was not lost on me. Every family dinner was the Kevin show. Every conversation circled back to Kevin's latest achievement, Kevin's new girlfriend, Kevin's brilliant ideas for startups that never materialized. My mom would ask Kevin about his life in exhaustive detail. What are you eating? Are you sleeping enough? Tell us about your friends. Meanwhile, I sat there like a piece of furniture. If someone remembered to ask me anything, it was usually a one-word question that got a one-word answer before the spotlight swung back to Golden Boy. I could cure cancer, and my parents would find a way to mention that Kevin once donated blood. I worked my way up slowly. Accounts receivable clerk to staff accountant to senior accountant. Each promotion came with a little more money and a little more respect. I lived below my means, saved everything I could, and kept my head down. My social life was basically non-existent because I was always working or studying for my CPA exam. But I passed it on the first try, which my parents acknowledged with a text message that said, "Good job." 2 words. Not even a full sentence. Meanwhile, Kevin got a party for landing a 6-month contract gig doing social media for a friend's failed restaurant. Kevin bounced from job to job like it was some kind of extreme sport. Social media manager for a startup that folded after 4 months. Sales rep at a car dealership where he quit after 2 months because the hours were too demanding. Marketing coordinator at a real estate firm where he got let go for spending too much time on personal calls. Assistant at an event planning company where he was fired for missing too many shifts. Every failure was someone else's fault. Every setback was just a stepping stone to something better. And my parents funded every single gap in his employment, without question. They paid his car insurance. They paid his phone bill. They gave him spending money. They bought him new clothes for job interviews. They never once asked when he was going to start standing on his own 2 feet, like they demanded of me. By the time I was 27, I had finally clawed my way to a comfortable position. Controller at a mid-sized manufacturing firm. Good salary, good benefits, good stability. I bought a modest house in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch that needed some work. The roof was old. The kitchen hadn't been updated since the 80s. The backyard was more weeds than grass. But it was mine. I paid for it with money I earned through years of grinding while my family ignored my existence. Kevin was still living in my parents' basement at 25, still figuring out his path, still being celebrated for his potential that never seemed to turn into anything real. Then the lottery thing happened, and everything changed. I'm not a gambler. Never have been. I don't play cards. I don't bet on sports. I think casinos are designed to separate fools from their money. But my coworker Linda was organizing an office pool for the Mega Millions jackpot that had gotten up to $400 million. She caught me in the break room while I was trying to eat my lunch in peace and asked if I wanted in. $20 for a share of whatever tickets the group bought. I said no at first because $20 was $20 and I didn't believe in throwing money away. Linda wouldn't let it go. She came back to my desk 3 times that afternoon. She sent me 2 emails. She stopped by my office the next morning. Finally, I caved just to get her off my back. I gave her the $20 and figured I would never see it again. The drawing happened on a Friday night. I forgot about it completely until Monday morning when Linda came running into my office looking like she had seen a ghost. For a second, I thought something terrible had happened. Then she started screaming that we won. We didn't win the big jackpot. Some couple in California got that. But one of our tickets matched 5 numbers without the mega ball. Our group of 12 co-workers split $2.4 million. After taxes and the split, my share came out to roughly $127,000. Now I know what you're thinking. That's not exactly life-changing money. And you're right. It's not quit your job and never work again money. It's not buy a mansion money. It's not even really brag about it money. But for someone who had been scraping by and saving every penny for a decade, it was huge. It represented freedom in a way I had never experienced. I paid off my house. Completely. No more mortgage payments hanging over my head. I paid off my car. I paid off the last of my student loans that had been following me around since community college. I put the rest into investments and retirement accounts. Suddenly, I had zero debt and a fully funded emergency fund. The psychological weight that lifted off my shoulders was something I can't even describe. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about money. I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't one unexpected expense away from financial disaster. I made the mistake of telling my family. The dinner where I announced my small windfall started normally enough. My mom had made pot roast, and we were all sitting around the table pretending to be a functional family unit. Kevin was going on about his latest business idea, something about a subscription box service for men's grooming products. He had been talking about it for months, but hadn't actually done anything beyond creating a Pinterest board of inspiration. My dad was nodding along like Kevin had just invented the wheel, while my mom looked at him with stars in her eyes. When there was a lull in the Kevin appreciation hour, I casually mentioned that I had some good news. I figured they might actually be happy for me for once. Maybe this would be the thing that finally made them see me as someone worth acknowledging. I told them about the office pool and my share of the winnings. I even downplayed it, saying it was enough to pay off my mortgage and put some away for retirement. I made it sound like less than it was because I didn't want to seem like I was bragging. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. My mom stopped mid-chew. My dad put down his fork. Kevin looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. They were all staring at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. My mom was the first to speak. She looked at Kevin, then at me, then at my dad. Her voice had this tone I knew all too well. The tone that meant I was about to hear something I didn't want to hear. The tone that usually preceded her explaining why Kevin deserved something, and I didn't. She said it was wonderful news, and that the money couldn't have come at a better time. Kevin had been working on his business plan and just needed some startup capital to really get it off the ground. She suggested that since I was already financially stable with my good job and my little house, maybe I could help my brother finally achieve his dreams. She said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Like, of course, I would hand over my lottery winnings to fund Kevin's subscription box fantasy. I literally laughed. I thought she was joking. I looked around the table waiting for someone to crack a smile, waiting for the punchline. She wasn't joking. None of them were. My dad jumped in before I could respond. He said that family helps family, and that's just how it works. He reminded me that they had always been there for me when I needed them. I almost choked on my pot roast at that one. They had never once been there for me. Not once in my entire adult life. I paid for my own education while they funded Kevin's extended vacation at state school. I paid for my own car while they bought Kevin a new one. I paid for my own everything while they handed Kevin a silver spoon every time he batted his eyes. Kevin, to his credit, at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. But he didn't tell them to stop. He didn't say he could figure it out on his own. He didn't defend me or point out how ridiculous they were being. He just sat there looking at me expectantly, like I was an ATM that had finally started dispensing cash. Like my money was his by default because we happened to share parents. I said no. Plain and simple. I told them the money was mine and I had plans for it. Plans that included securing my own future, because nobody else was going to do it for me. I said it calmly and clearly without raising my voice. Clearly. That's when everything went sideways. My mom started crying. Not sad crying, but angry crying. The kind where her face got red and her voice got loud and she made sure everyone knew how wounded she was. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She said she always knew I was jealous of Kevin, but she never thought I would be cruel enough to watch him struggle when I had the means to help. She asked what kind of person refuses to help their own brother when they have more money than they know what to do with. I pointed out that $127,000 was not more money than I knew what to do with. I told her exactly what I had done with it. Paid off debts, funded retirement, created an emergency fund. Responsible adult things that they had never helped me accomplish. She didn't care. She just kept crying and talking over me. My dad stood up so fast his chair fell over backward and hit the wall. He called me a disappointment and said that everything they had ever done for me clearly meant nothing. He said Kevin had real potential, and I was just an accountant who got lucky. An accountant. He said it like it was a slur, like the career I had built through years of education and hard work was somehow less valuable than Kevin's potential to maybe someday possibly start a subscription box company if he ever got around to it. I stayed calm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I simply stated the facts. I reminded them of every single time they had chosen Kevin over me. The football versus lacrosse situation. The college funding. The car for his birthday versus my grandmother's hand-me-down. The basement apartment versus being told real men don't move backwards. The graduation party versus the three-letter text message. Every double standard. Every ignored achievement. Every dollar they spent on him while telling me to figure it out myself. I told them that I had worked for everything I had, and I wasn't about to hand it over to someone who had been handed everything his whole life. I said that if Kevin wanted startup capital, he could do what I did. Get a job, work hard, save money, live below his means, sacrifice, grind, earn it. Kevin finally spoke up. He said I was being ridiculous and that it wasn't that serious. He said family is supposed to support each other, and I was making a big deal out of nothing. He said he would pay me back once his business took off. The same business that existed only in his head and a Google Doc he started 6 months ago and hadn't touched since. I told him no. I told all of them no. Then I got up from the table, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of that house. Over the next few weeks, the pressure campaign began. My mom called me every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes she was crying and begging, telling me how worried she was about Kevin's future. Sometimes she was cold and threatening, telling me I was going to regret this when they were gone and I had nobody. She left voicemails that alternated between guilt trips and veiled threats. She texted me Bible verses about family loyalty. My dad sent me long emails about family honor and how disappointed my grandparents would be if they could see how I was acting. He compared me to his brother, who had cut off the family years ago and was now apparently miserable and alone. He told me I was on a path to the same fate if I didn't wise up and start acting like a real member of this family. Kevin showed up at my house twice to plead his case in person. The first time he came with a printed-out business plan that was clearly written in one afternoon. He went through the whole pitch like I was some venture capitalist, and not his brother, who he had barely acknowledged for years. He talked about market opportunities and growth projections and customer acquisition costs. None of the numbers made sense. None of the ideas were original. I told him I wasn't interested and closed the door. The second time he came with our mom. They tag-teamed me on my own doorstep. My mom cried while Kevin gave me the hard sell about how this was his one chance to make something of himself. I told them both to leave. My mom called me heartless. Kevin called me a sellout who forgot where he came from. I closed the door and didn't answer when they knocked for another 20 minutes. Then the family meeting happened. My parents called a gathering at their house with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. My dad called me personally to make sure I would be there. He said it was important family business and my presence was required. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway because I foolishly believed that maybe the extended family would see reason. Maybe someone would acknowledge that I wasn't obligated to fund Kevin's dreams just because we shared DNA. Maybe one person in that room would be on my side. I was wrong. My mom had spent the weeks before that meeting poisoning the well. She had called every relative. She had sent emails and Facebook messages and probably carrier pigeons for all I know. She had told everyone her version of events. In her story, I had won millions of dollars in the lottery and refused to share a single penny with my struggling brother who just needed a small loan to get on his feet. She conveniently left out the years of favoritism, the financial support they had always given Kevin, the complete lack of support they had given me. She painted me as a greedy monster hoarding wealth while my poor brother suffered. I walked into that living room and every single person looked at me like I was something they scraped off their shoe. My Aunt Patricia spoke first. She's my mom's sister and has always been her biggest enabler. She said she was so disappointed in me and that she never raised her kids to be so greedy. She said money changes people and clearly it had changed me for the worse. She said my grandmother would be rolling in her grave. My uncle Robert, my dad's brother, said blood was thicker than water and I should be ashamed of myself. He talked about how the family had always helped each other through tough times. He conveniently forgot that nobody had helped me through tough times ever. My cousin Ashley, who I had always thought was the reasonable one, said she couldn't believe I would let money come between me and my family. She said Kevin had always looked up to me, and this was how I repaid that admiration. Kevin had never looked up to me. Kevin barely acknowledged my existence except when he wanted something. I tried to explain. I tried to give them the context they were missing. I started talking about the years of favoritism and the different rules and the financial support Kevin received that I never did. But every time I opened my mouth, someone cut me off. My mom would start crying louder. My dad would talk over me. Kevin would shake his head sadly like I was the one being unreasonable. The narrative had been set before I walked in the door. I was the villain, and Kevin was the victim. Finally, my dad stood up and made his big announcement. He said that since I had made it clear that I didn't consider myself part of this family, they would grant my wish. He said I was dead to them, officially and permanently disowned. He told everyone present that they should treat me the same way. No contact, no acknowledgement, no invitations to family events. As far as they were all concerned, he only had one son now. Then he pointed at the door. My mom was crying again, the satisfied kind of crying that comes from getting your way and wanting everyone to witness your moral victory. Kevin was standing behind them with his arms crossed, looking at me with something close to smugness. My aunts and uncles and cousins were all nodding along, like my dad had just delivered some profound wisdom instead of banishing his own child over money. I stood there for a moment. I looked at each face in that room. These people who were supposed to be my family. These people who had chosen Kevin over me at every single turn, and were now banishing me for refusing to continue the tradition. I said, okay, just okay. Then I walked out of that house for the last time. I drove home that night and sat in my driveway for a long time. Then I went inside and started making changes. I blocked every single one of them the next morning. My parents, Kevin, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who was at that meeting, and everyone who reached out afterward to tell me how wrong I was. I changed my phone number the same day, walked into the carrier store, and got a completely new number. I deleted my Facebook account, my Instagram, everything. I wanted to disappear from their lives as completely as they wanted me gone from theirs. The first few weeks were strange. I kept expecting my phone to ring with another guilt trip. I kept waiting for someone to show up at my door. Nobody did. They actually meant it. They actually cut me off completely. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was angry that it was so easy for them. I threw myself into work. I took on extra projects. I stayed late. I came in early. My boss noticed. Within 6 months, I was being groomed for a promotion. Within a year, I was vice president of finance. Within 2 years, I was CFO. Each promotion came with a bigger salary, better benefits, more responsibility. I invested everything I could. I built a portfolio that would have made my past self weep with disbelief. I bought a bigger house on 5 acres just outside the city. A real house this time, not a starter home with a leaky roof. This one had a pond in the back and a detached workshop where I taught myself woodworking. I installed a security system with cameras at the front gate because the property was set back from the road, and I liked my privacy. I traveled to places I had always wanted to see. Japan for 3 weeks, Iceland during the Northern Lights season, New Zealand where I went bungee jumping off a bridge and felt more alive than I had in years. I sent postcards to nobody. I dated for the first time since college. Actually dated, not just thought about it. I met women through work events and mutual friends. Some relationships lasted a few months, some only a few weeks. I wasn't in a rush. I was learning what I wanted and what I deserved. I made real friends who valued me for who I was. Guys I met at a woodworking class who invited me to their poker nights. Couples from work who included me in their dinner parties. People who asked about my life and actually listened to the answers. People who celebrated my wins without asking for a cut. I also got married. Her name is Grace, and she's the most incredible woman I have ever met. We connected at a conference in Chicago and spent the entire evening talking about everything and nothing. She laughed at my jokes. She asked follow-up questions when I talked about my work. She looked at me like I was interesting instead of invisible. She's a financial analyst with her own career and her own ambitions. When I eventually told her my whole story, she didn't pity me or try to fix me. She just said it sounded like I had built something amazing out of a bad situation. That was it. No judgment, no advice about reconciliation, just acknowledgement. She knows everything about my biological relatives and has no desire to ever meet them. Her family welcomed me from the first moment she brought me home. Her mom made me a plate before I even sat down. Her dad asked about my work and actually remembered the details for the next time I visited. Her parents call me son. Her brother invites me to watch football every Sunday and always has my favorite snacks ready. I finally understood what it felt like to belong somewhere. 5 years passed. 5 years of no contact. 5 years of building something real. Then last month happened. Grace and I were getting ready for a Saturday morning trip to the farmer's market when our security system beeped. We have cameras at the front gate because our property is set back from the road. I pulled up the app on my phone expecting to see a delivery driver. I literally dropped it. Standing at my gate were my parents. They looked older. Much older than 5 years should account for. My mom's hair had gone completely gray and she had lost weight in a way that didn't look healthy. My dad was leaning heavily on a cane. They were driving a beat-up sedan, a far cry from the nice SUV they used to have. Grace picked up my phone and looked at the screen. She asked if those were the people she thought they were. I nodded. She asked what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to hear what they had to say. I drove down to the gate in my truck. I didn't open it. I didn't invite them in. I just rolled down the window and asked what they wanted. My mom started crying immediately. She said they had been trying to find me for months. They said they needed to talk to me urgently. They said it was about Kevin. I asked again what they wanted. My dad cleared his throat. The arrogance I remembered was gone. He looked defeated. He said Kevin was sick. Really sick. Some kind of rare autoimmune condition that attacked his nervous system. He needed specialized treatment at a clinic out of state. The treatment was experimental and expensive. Insurance would only cover a portion. They had already burned through their savings. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house. They had sold Kevin's car and most of their valuables. They needed money, a lot of money, and they had heard through the grapevine that I was doing well. He asked if I could find it in my heart to help my brother. I asked how much they needed. My dad said the treatment would cost around $200,000 over the next 2 years. They had maybe $40,000 left after everything they had already spent. They needed me to cover the rest. $160,000. My mom started pleading through her tears. She said she knew they had made mistakes. She said they were sorry for how they treated me. She said Kevin was her baby, and she couldn't watch him suffer. She begged me to put the past behind us and help my brother. I asked where Kevin was. Why wasn't he here asking for himself? My dad said Kevin was too sick to travel and too proud to ask. Too proud. The kid who never earned $1 in his life was suddenly too proud to ask for 160,000 of them. My mom reached through the gate bars and tried to grab my arm. I pulled back before she could touch me. She started talking faster, more desperate. She said they would do anything. They would apologize publicly. They would tell the whole family they were wrong. They would make it right. She just needed me to help Kevin first. I asked her if she remembered the family meeting, the one where my dad pointed at the door and told everyone I was dead to them. She said she remembered, and she was sorry. I asked her if she remembered what she said to me when I tried to explain my side. She went quiet. She hadn't said anything. She had just cried and let everyone else attack me. My dad tried a different approach. He started talking about the medical details, the name of the condition, the treatment protocol, the success rates. He had clearly memorized all of it. He was trying to make it sound urgent and scientific, like if he presented enough facts, I would be swayed by logic. I let him finish. Then I asked him one question. Would they have come to Kevin's gate asking him to help me? Neither of them answered. I looked at my mom with her gray hair and her tears. I looked at my dad with his cane and his defeated posture. I said 4 words. Ghosts don't have bank accounts. Then I rolled up my window and drove back up to my house. They stood at that gate for another hour, pressing the buzzer over and over, crying, yelling. My mom collapsed on the ground at one point, and my dad had to help her up. He stood at the camera and talked directly into it, apologizing for everything, begging me to reconsider. I watched it all on the security cameras and felt nothing. Eventually, they left. 2 weeks later, they came back. This time, Kevin was with them. He was in a wheelchair, looking thin and pale. My dad pushed him up to the gate while my mom pressed the buzzer. I watched on the cameras as Kevin looked directly into the lens and started talking. He said he was sorry for everything. He said he should have stood up for me. He said he needed my help and he was begging. I didn't go down to the gate. I turned off the monitor and went back to making breakfast with Grace. They stayed for 3 hours. Kevin kept talking to the camera. My mom kept crying. My dad kept pressing the buzzer. Eventually, a neighbor must have called somebody because a police cruiser pulled up. The officer talked to them for about 10 minutes. Then they left. The next week, my Aunt Patricia showed up. She came alone, driving her fancy car up my gravel road like she owned the place. She stood at the gate and demanded I come talk to her. I watched her on the camera for about 30 seconds before I went back to what I was doing. She left after an hour of yelling about family loyalty and how I was killing my brother. Then, the letters started arriving. Handwritten letters from my mom, 3 or 4 pages long, talking about all the good times we had as a family. Except I couldn't remember any good times. Every memory she referenced was actually about Kevin. She just didn't realize it. My dad sent a formal letter through a lawyer, asking if I would consider a loan with interest and a payment plan. I threw it away without responding. Kevin sent a letter too. 5 pages of apologies and explanations. He said our parents had always put him in the middle. He said he never asked for the favoritism. He said he knew it was wrong, but he didn't know how to stop it. He said he was dying, and the last thing he wanted was to die without making things right with me. I read the whole thing. Then I threw it away. A month after the gate incident, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because I was expecting a work call. It was my cousin Jake, the one who had always seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings. He said he wanted to apologize for the family meeting 5 years ago. He said he knew they were wrong, but he was too scared to speak up. He said my parents had been calling everyone trying to raise money for Kevin, and nobody had much to give. He said they were going to lose the house. I told him I appreciated the apology. I told him I didn't hold anything against him personally. Then I told him that what happened to my parents and Kevin wasn't my problem anymore. He said he understood. He said he just wanted me to know that not everyone in the family agreed with what happened. He said he hoped I was doing well. I told him I was doing great. Last week, Grace and I had dinner with her parents. We told them we're expecting our first child, a little girl. Her mom cried happy tears. Her dad shook my hand and pulled me into a hug. Her brother started making jokes about being an uncle. It was everything I never had growing up. On the drive home, Grace asked if I ever thought about reaching out to my biological family, just to let them know about the baby. I told her no. They declared me dead 5 years ago. Dead men don't send birth announcements. She squeezed my hand and didn't say anything else. Yesterday, I got a notification that someone had been at the gate again. I checked the security footage. It was Kevin, alone this time, in a different wheelchair. He sat there for about 20 minutes without pressing the buzzer or saying anything, just looking at the house in the distance. Then someone came to pick him up and he left. I deleted the footage. Update. Some people have been asking what happened with Kevin's treatment. I found out through a friend of a friend that my parents did eventually raise enough money. They sold the house, took out loans, and apparently got some help from a charity that assists with medical costs. Kevin started treatment about 2 months ago. I don't know how it's going, and I don't plan to find out. My Aunt Patricia apparently told the whole extended family that I'm the reason my parents lost their house. She's been telling everyone I could have saved them, but chose not to. A few cousins have reached out to yell at me. I blocked them all. My cousin Jake messaged me last week to let me know that my parents moved into a small apartment. He said my dad went back to work at 68 to help cover the bills. He said my mom barely leaves the house anymore. He wasn't trying to guilt me. He just thought I should know. I thanked him for the update. Then I went back to painting the nursery. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks.